It's TGI Friday on the Fun Astrology Podcast. I'm so glad you stopped by. Thomas Miller, thanks for listening and thanks for being here. We're going to talk about a big one. We've got another big one. This one happens tomorrow. Are you aware what tomorrow brings? This is a big deal in the sky. Pluto turns retrograde. 2:32 p.m. Eastern. You know, because this is something that it moves so slowly, first of all, that the slowing down, I mean, we're in it now, basically. You could just say that we're in it. It officially starts going retrograde tomorrow afternoon. If you want some numbers, here they are. It will begin at 24 degrees 59 minutes Capricorn. That's 24:59. Stays in retrograde until October 4th. Now, we're not going to go into all the other retrogrades that are going to be taking place this summer, but Saturn, Jupiter, Venus is already retrograde now. Mars will be in retrograde. Uranus will be in retrograde. I mean, my God, the whole chart, it's like, what's not? Saturn turns direct before Pluto does, and the closest they will be is right there when Pluto turns direct. And Saturn will be at 25 degrees Capricorn, and Pluto will be at 22 degrees. Also interesting to note is that Pluto will be at 22 degrees 29 minutes Capricorn. Remember, the big conjunction on January 12th was at 22 degrees 46 minutes. So Pluto will actually trace back over the point of the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. What's missing is Saturn being right there as well. Saturn is 3 degrees away, tries to get in there close, but just can't quite make it. Now, there's another big thing, and I'm kind of walking backwards here, so let's walk backwards from October. October is going to be a really big month astrologically. Really big. Going to be a really big month. Really big month, I'm telling you, a really big month. June 29th is another one to just tuck away in the stretches of your memory, because that's the next time that Jupiter and Pluto will conjunct. Now, the last time was on April 4th at 25 degrees Capricorn. If you remember, we were talking about this then, that there are going to be 3 Jupiter-Pluto conjunctions this year. So June 29th is the next. Then the next one after that will be November 12. And to make sure of that date. So this is because of the retrogrades. So it's like this dance, it's 1 step forward, 2 steps back, 4 steps forward. So this is an energy that we have to recognize, this Jupiter-Pluto energy. We've seen it direct. Now we're going to see it half retrograde, then we'll see it full retrograde, and then we'll see it direct again. Now, I'm not going to take more time here to go into this. I'd like to refer you back to the Astrology King blog. I do this because he's just that good. Jamie Partridge, he's in the land down under, and sure appreciate his work because he really does extensive research, presents it in a concise way, and his astrological knowledge is profound. I will put the link to his article in the show notes, but I'm going to warn you, don't read it if you want a pick-me-up, because it has some dark sides to it. And I mean, he paints the picture that's there, and I'm going to take another turn on it because I think there's another way to look at this Pluto retrograde season. So for more details and depth, I'll refer you to Jamie. Check out the show notes. You can click on the link and go there. There's one other thing we have to address, though, working backwards. Right before Pluto goes retrograde, a very interesting thing happens. Mercury squares Pluto. Now, that's going to happen, if you're calculating the times, at 3:36 a.m. tomorrow morning. Why I say that's interesting is because of what happens on Sunday. Mercury squares Jupiter, and that will happen at 12:31 a.m. Eastern Time. And then let's bring it all the way to today, which there's nothing going on, except the moon goes void, of course, at 8:42 p.m. tonight Eastern Time. Moves into Gemini tomorrow morning early, hopefully while you're asleep, 3:19 a.m. Eastern Time. Now, let's take a look at this in some context. First of all, let's address these squares with Mercury. Could that trigger some stuff around either communication around this virus or travel? Yes, possibly. Again, are we in a macro-dominated culture here or a micro-dominated culture? I say mostly macro. You know, after it rains real hard and the river swells and we've been out there floating on the swollen river, eventually that water comes back down and the subtle currents resurface. So we may not be getting too far away from that. The other thing that we really don't ever get rid of in this Pluto retrograde season is Jupiter. Now, remember I said October was going to be a key period, and here's one other astrological resource that you might want to take note of. If you go on Facebook and search up the profile page of Robert Hand. Robert Hand is one of the premier astrologers in our world today. PhD, very well studied, excellent astrologer. He has a Facebook page. If you go on there, I don't think it's his very first post today, but it's like one of the first couple down there. You will see a rather long article and several charts about the Kovat virus. And what he does is he looks at the ingresses. So basically when the sun moves into Aries, Cancer, summer, Libra, and then Capricorn, and paints a picture in a mundane astrological analysis of those four ingresses. And it's basically the four equinoxes, right? He explains the whole thing and does a very good job of it. I'm reading the article for about the third time now and highlighting things and making notes and the whole deal. It will stretch your vocabulary and it will stretch your mind. But basically he says the same thing. The fall has another pretty ominous, like maybe this thing lightens up a little bit in the summer and then the fall gets heavy again. That matches this. Now, if you want the quickest, shortest definition of a planet in retrograde, if you have one in your natal chart, for example, you read that as internalizing what would otherwise be the outward manifestations of that planet. So let's say that Mercury's in retrograde in your natal chart. Mercury is about communication. It's about learning and knowledge and intellect. It's about school up to at least college. It's about short-term travel. So you look at those particular areas of your life and you look at where have you grown or where does the universe give you opportunities to grow in those areas, but it's more internal reflective growth than I'm going to go out and save the world through my prose and communication. Does that make sense? You might hear communication and process communication and learning and internalize what you hear and apply it and then figure out ways to help implement it in other people's lives, but it's been through the filter of your own life first, where some other people with a very strong, prominent Mercury might grab the microphone and just take off. So if we apply that same idea to Pluto, Pluto's all about death and transformation, death, rebirth. And you know what? This podcast I'm noticing is getting a little long, and my goal was to try to keep these shorter. Why don't I do a part 2, and we'll just call it Saturday's episode? Would that be okay with you? Let's pick up with the cliffhanger at death and rebirth for a retrograde planet. How about that? So have a good Friday, and you know what? I'll just roll right on and do this as a part 2 so you can listen to it on Friday or Saturday or Sunday or whenever you want to. At your pleasure. Thanks for stopping by. Thomas Miller. Have a great Friday. I'll roll right on into part 2.